Sweet. Hello, everybody. This is the fifth ETHSecurity community call. Recently, 2 weeks ago, we had our Security Unconf in Berlin, so this is our first meeting since then. A couple topics of conversation would be the scheduling for the meeting, the working groups for ETHSecurity, would be the ETHSecurity report, a survey we're planning on doing, and kind of a group manifesto article that we're planning to write. I guess traditionally we've done intros for people who are on the call. Maybe we could do brief intros, just like who you are, what organization you're with, and we can go from there. And maybe any other topics if you have any, feel free to share out. I'll start. My name is Kevin Seagraves. I'm helping to organize the ETHSecurity group and developing at Gitcoin. I've just said kind of my proposed topics. So I'll next in line down my Zoom list is Dan. So Dan, why don't you go first?
Hey, I'm the CEO of Trilobits. In terms of announcements, we've been working full speed ahead on our static analyzer for Solidity, and it's seen some major improvements in the last 2 weeks or so. So Slither is looking pretty good. It's finding bugs, and it's going to have an IR for Solidity soon too. But that's it.
Great. Dean, you're next on my list.
Hey, Dean Pierce, Consensus Diligence. Yay.
Cool. Rex?
Rex with SecureETH doing guidelines. I'm part-time and in aerospace full-time.
Sweet. Bryant, you popped up next.
Hi, this is Bryant, helping organize the security effort and also working with Rex on the SecureETH guidelines, and currently working full-time on a project called GunClear.
Cool. Corey?
Hey guys, Corey Petty here. Work security at Status IM, run the Bitcoin Podcast Network and also the Hashing It Out podcast. I try to contribute where I can in this community because I like having everyone here so I can learn from everyone here.
Sweet. Next up I have Evgeny. Am I saying that right?
Hi guys, I'm not sure if my mic works properly. I'm from Smart Deck team. I'm Timothy. I'm working on audits and our tool Smart Check and some other small projects of us. Nice to meet you.
Cool. Nice to meet you too. All right. Lordana? Nope. No Lordana. Okay, Steven? Are you on from TOB?
Yes. Good afternoon. This is Stefan Edwards from Trilobits.
Sorry.
Whoop.
My mic went off. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead, Lordana, and then we'll go back to Stefan.
Did you guys hear anything from me?
No, we didn't.
Okay. So Loredana Kursta, currently working for Brainbot Rating Network, also started building a visual ID for smart contracts. Newcomer here, I was in the Solidity Security on conference, and I want to see if I can be of help with anything. That's it.
Cool. Welcome.
Awesome. Stefan, do you want to do a quick thing?
No, my name is Stefan Edwards. I am a senior security engineer here at Trilobits, working with Dan and the other Trilobits team on smart contracts, assurances, etc. So
cool. And I think last we have Jared.
Hello, I'm Jared. I am with QuantSnap. I do the community there. I was helping out with the guidelines workshop with Bryant, Rex, and Gonzalo. And I was participating in the ETHSecurity governance event at the workshop.
Sweet. Thanks, everybody. So I guess, yeah, first topic that I had planned out was thinking about how are we actually going to organize these working groups. Like I said earlier, it seemed like a bunch of people planned to have calls this Friday around the same time as this call, which seems like a pretty heavy day for meetings. And so I was wondering if this meeting could act more as a share out for those working groups. We might be able to schedule those at different times during the week. So I'm wondering how many champions of those working groups we actually have here on this call, and we can kind of start moving in that direction.
I have no idea what the working groups are, who runs any of them.
Sure, yeah, so maybe that's a good thing to capture. So I guess for me, I could say I'm leading the structure working group right now, which is the defrag group at the Unconf. And then JP had sort of led the trustlessness issues, which kind of became an access control working group. I'm not sure how keen he is to continue that, so I might be doing that one as well, if it even needs anything.
So regarding that, we spent some time writing some code, and I think we solved the problem.
Okay.
So
cool.
I'll tell you about that later.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Anybody else? I know.
Rex and Jared were sort of joint leading the guidelines working group.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Chris took the lead on this, but he was doing the repo and what's going to go inside of it working group.
The wiki one.
Yeah, the wiki.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's still planning on doing that. I'm not sure where he is today. Does anybody know who took on the 721 working group? Or the assessment stamp, I guess, not necessarily 721.
I thought the consensus on that was that we shouldn't do it.
I thought it was a solid stamp, but yeah, I think it might be a little early for something like that, but
okay.
It doesn't mean it's not valuable. It's just where does it fit in priority, I guess.
Speaking of solid stamp, I think Jacob just joined.
Hi guys, sorry for being late. This is Jacob.
Right.
No, that's all right. Jacob, we're just kind of going back through who the champions are for the different working groups, and trying to think about how when are these meetings actually going to happen, because it didn't seem like there was great structure around that at the Unconf. So just trying to keep that that motion happening. Were you? I know you were involved with the assessment stamp working group. Were you acting as kind of champion on that, or what was the outcome of that group?
We had a discussion. There were lots of different opinions about the whole topic. I'm not sure if I'm acting as a champion there. I think there was no one popped up as a champion there. I still work on the stamping thing. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if There isn't a community around it, or a bigger group of people, from what I understand.
Okay. That's totally fine. So nobody has. Let's see. We had the stamp. What other groups did we have that don't have a representative right now? Can any of you remember? I've got the stuff in Google somewhere.
I'll try and find the list while you're continuing.
Sure. Thanks, Corey. So So I guess if these are the 3 or 4 kind of groups we have right now, do any of them actually have a scheduled a time that they're planning on meeting right now? Jared or Rex, Chris isn't here, so.
I think we had just talked about 2 weeks from the last sort of conference, and then just continue on from that. But I think we were also all waiting for this meeting to sort of then get it going again. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else, if Bryant or Rex, you have comments on that, but that's
The resources, what we use as tools, where we put the information, where the discourse will be and such, in order to be able to properly get things started. So I think some output on that would help.
So far, we have a Telegram group. I think that's all we can say for sure.
Yeah, previously, prior to Berlin, we had discussed keeping all that information on GitHub so that there was a single repository of where you can find those, even if it gets distributed to different things. Like some folks use Slack, some folks use Telegram. If it could hit a central location similar to like awesome Ethereum security or something like that, that would be awesome.
Right.
And that's kind of what we came to agreement on during that workshop, was basically that repo is basically going to be the touch point for all things associated with who's doing what within the community. Not necessarily like trying to make content itself, but more of like a funnel to put people where they need to go based on what they're trying to get.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, is this the same repo that Chris is champion on? Is
Correct.
that what we're referring to? Okay, cool. Yep. That was my understanding as well. Okay, so sounds like
as far as I know, there's no movement there either yet. We haven't done anything to it since the conference. So
right, I believe that is correct. So I think having the Tele group to start and starting to schedule meetings is probably good, and then we can concurrently spin up the repo. I know Chris is keen on making that happen. So okay, cool. So I guess we'll expect to hear an announcement on potential guidelines meeting in the community channel sometime soon.
We will meet sometime in the next 2 weeks before the next meeting.
Okay, cool. I would think the structure group is probably about the same. It's probably going to happen in the next week or two. I'm kind of working on the community report, trying to get that out before starting to think about the organization structure as a whole. And that might be a good segue to start talking about the report. Does anybody have anything else on the working groups before we move on?
I couldn't find the curated list of working groups that we actually discussed at the unconference, but I found the exhaustive list that had basically what was picked from.
Okay.
So if you have that, what was shown on at the actual unconference, then post that.
Sure. Yeah, I believe I have the like the Google Slides that people had their takeaways from the workshops. So I'll post a link to that real quick. Instead of taking time to do that, I might just go into talking about the community report, since that seems to be more important for the rest of us, or for all of us, I guess. So the community report is findings from all of the community interviews that we did, these community calls, as well as the Uncomp itself. So I've drafted a Medium article and shared it out to key people in the community for some feedback. I've now collected all that feedback as of last night, and so I'm going to be working today and probably over the weekend to revise that document, and then I'll be sharing it out to a wider circle of people before full publish, hopefully early next week, and then shooting for a final release either end of next week or beginning of the following week. It's something I do think it's worth taking a good amount of time on, because it is kind of the value that we're getting out of all of these interviews and all the work we've done up till now. So I don't think it's something we should rush, and it'll be fine to take time on. Yeah, it's going pretty well. If there's anybody who would like to receive a copy of that pre-publish, I suppose shoot me a message on Telegram. I don't know that we need to vocalize it on here, but just let me know, and we can share that out. And that's also kind of leading towards the next conversation, which is about this kind of manifesto document, talking about the structure and what we want ETHSecurity to be. I don't know, maybe we could just open it up and start to do an initial kind of vocal survey of like, what do we want ETHSecurity to be? We can begin to capture that information before, as we shape this larger survey that we're going to send out to the community. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that?
I guess like the one high level comment I could say is that, my opinion as an engineer, I want to fix things. I don't want to deal with like downstream effects. So the most that we can push what we do upstream and have it result in technology changes so that as security people, we do less work is the direction I want to go. So one thing I could call out is like, in the agenda down here, you have open source auditing fund. I would actually flip this on its head and say, can we do an open source security engineering fund, where instead of reviewing somebody's code for nonsense and mistakes, if we just find a way to contribute our time so that no one makes that mistake ever again. That's always been my perspective on things.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah. Well, let's take Slither, for instance. We're writing a static analyzer because there's just too much code to review in the world, and I'd like a machine to do it for me. So we're writing a lot of these security review guidelines, and it's really hard to convince someone to read a book and then to understand all the information in it. Whereas instead, if we had a programmatic check for these things, all you'd have to do is convince someone to use the tool once, and then forever they would get the knowledge and the benefit of all the checks that are included. So like, that's a really easy example, but like trying to push things up to the compiler or up to the IDEs or up to whatever tools developers are using, or even let's talk about frameworks. Like, people are using reusable pieces of code instead of auditing downstream effects of maybe broken libraries. If there are ways that we can contribute fixes to those libraries so they're harder to misuse, I think that would be a really valuable way to spend our time that would impact a larger group of people.
Does the fund also basically identify these issues and then allocate funds towards solving them to anyone basically?
Yeah, so there are so many issues out there. I don't know if the challenge is finding new ones.
Yeah.
At this point, we are completely consumed by security issues, and trying to pay somebody to go find an additional group of them, I think personally has limited impact, just because everything's surface level. I can go just stick my hand down and pull up a fistful of bugs wherever I go looking. So what I really want to do is flip the conversation around and just say, you know what, we know where all the bugs are. We know what's good and what's not. Let's just go fix the problem.
And do you envision it something similar to the Ethereum Community Fund, in that the way they're funding layer 2 solutions, but this fund would fund sort of upstream solutions that people are working on in engineering problems.
Yeah, so call it like the Security Improvement Fund.
Okay.
How about?
Would this also be a way to fund security as an organization as well, or is it separate to that?
I think Kevin's, somebody's got to take responsibility for finding the money, and it's probably not going to be me. But if we're going to spend money on anything, if there's a way to allocate resources, or if there's a way to push people to do things, right? Because like part of the value of ETHSecurity isn't so much like we don't have any money right now. There's no money involved in this conversation. There's no money that got people to join a Telegram chat. There's no money, right? Zero. But what we do get by having these calls and by having a shared chat and everything else is influence. We can tell people like, hey, if you're going to contribute something, here are the things that would be the most beneficial to everybody. So in terms of influence, like if we're going to influence people to do things, I would rather influence people to be engineers than influence people to be bug finders.
I agree with that. So then, okay, then if that's the thinking, I know we haven't gotten there yet, but look, if that's the thinking.
It's just my opinion, right? But
I think I do see it as valuable. We are ostensibly this group in Telegram kind of in some respects make up a bit of a think tank. That funding mechanism being able to influence upstream engineering is also indicative of that kind of thinking. I see value there.
I agree with any of that, all of that, in terms of like what the purpose of this group is, in terms of trying to inform people who would like to contribute what makes the most impact with that money.
So it sounds like ETHSecurity is, meant to be a signal and getting people to be towards building and engineers versus fixing other people's code, is what I'm hearing.
I mean, I also don't think that it's not those who are auditing or
Jared, you're coming in a bit quiet.
Sorry, I don't think it should exclude second order effects or that stuff, but certainly getting people to have better habits is important.
Sure.
Scanning the overall security in general is important. I think we're all, like, there's always going to be second order effects, so I don't think that should be excluded from it. But that's
oh yeah, no, I think the approach is you want to try to minimize what the downstream problems are over time, right? You're not going to completely get rid of them, but like you've got to have a portfolio, right? So what we have to have is a portfolio, and there's got to be a portfolio of projects that are strategic in nature, where the strategy is eliminate the ability to have a bug. And then there's some projects in the portfolio that are tactical in nature, of like, let's go find and fix as many bugs as we can. And then there are some projects in the portfolio that are operational in nature, like let's go do some outreach and do some training. And you can't exclude any one piece of it, but it's certainly the most important to have the most effort spent on the long-term strategic stuff, because without that, you never actually solve the problem.
I agree. There are three sort of levers in a way to pull, but where we are at right now in terms of the space and security of the space, it makes far more sense to be pulling one lever over another.
Yeah, because right now everything's on fire. Yeah.
A little bit.
So one way that I could like zoom out really high and just kind of like make sense of this is that I think if the ETHSecurity community just puts a bunch of flags down on the ground and says these are the problems that need to get solved, we want this to be a rallying point, and we'll try to convince people through like influence and outreach and altruism to do those things. Or there might be other ways that we could push people to do those things by like telling the ECF that, hey, these are the projects that we think you should fund, or by getting its own bucket of money and doing the same thing. But like the primary, I think, position that the ETHSecurity people could be in is just like set what the goal is and push people to run towards it.
I mean,
So this is
ECF is
in the
already-
wiki.
Go ahead, Rex.
I was just going to say, so this would be like the front and center part of the wiki, or would this, is there a list of this already in your list of lists?
Well, I think this list is really what's coming out of the community report, right? This is like what we identified through the interviews and through the working groups as these are the top issues. And there's probably 10 or 12, I think, in the report of kind of like these seem to be the overarching themes. Some of them are more specific than others, but they're kind of like pointing out like these are the things we need to address first. These are the most glaring issues. Yeah, and I think that's addressing your question, Rex.
I was going to say the ECF has already basically said they're willing to put funds towards solving these types of issues, but these issues right now collectively exist within like the mind share of this community. They need to be put down in some type of vehicle and then like roadmaps or prioritization of these types of problems, which is what we're doing now until the money actually gets there to help solve the problem.
Right. It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg in that having money to really run at these problems is necessary, but we also need to like define scope and figure out what are we actually going to do so we can find that money. At least myself, I'm hesitant to get money, to ask for money before we fully know what we're going to go out and execute on, because then, like, you know, there's more of a chance of wasting those funds and that kind of political capital and reputation.
So what I'm saying is then kind of based around what Dan was saying, is those kind of established sort of buckets or something, some sort of, you know, and then our values, goals, and these buckets. And then that can be applied to the way the, you know, information being structured is put out, or as an overarching way to look at it. That can also then each piece evolve into where we want to go with funding, or it sounds like there's we're talking about a few different things, but there's still some very similar aspects of each of those things that could almost allow for structure for it all to flow together. And I don't know if they're making any sense.
Okay. I mean, I think this is great conversation on defining, you know, what are we trying to do and what do we want this organization to look like. Do people feel like a written survey would be worthwhile and something that people beyond this conversation would fill out? Like, is that something we should do? Should we spend our time doing that?
I don't know if that's necessary. I think driving people who are interested in this type of conversation to this community so they can contribute would be better, as opposed to just polling a shitload of people who aren't going to contribute.
Yep.
Do you guys think the working group approach is going to be helpful in this regard?
Depends on who runs the working group.
Yeah.
I mean, all these things depends on accountability, and it depends on like who's in charge of that group. You got to expect some of them are going to turn out to be nothing, and that some of them will turn out to be great. It's kind of opportunistic. It's kind of why, like, I don't want ETHSecurity to like own those things. Like, what it does is it tries to push people in the right direction of like, go solve this. And then maybe some people get a shot and they try it and it doesn't work out. So then we say, you know what, this is still the goal. Someone else should take a shot. But it's going to be really hard, like, if the ETHSecurity group itself like owns the solution that it's trying to build, and it tells, like, you know, some group of people that, okay, you guys go create this, and then when you're done, we'll like bless it as the ETHSecurity solution. Because first off, everyone's going to have a problem with it. And then because there's no real money involved, like, the quality of the solution could be really good or really bad, depending on how much personal time whoever put in. It's kind of like, I would see the core ETHSecurity stuff be like an advisory firm? Sorry if that answered the question, but kind of in a roundabout weird way.
No, I think that was a pretty good answer.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience working with OWASP, it's very quick to have a bunch of folks who are super interested in something, spin up a whole bunch of like chats and wikis and GitHubs and things like that, and then literally nothing comes of it because there's no accountability, there's no time. I think if we focus on advisory and the things that we know are broken and real problems that we can solve now as a group, we can, put off those things that are harder and take a lot more time to do towards later when we have a better understanding of the problems that are there. Whereas right now, it seems like we're still sussing out many of those things. We don't really want to get too involved in very difficult, very deep problems just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll add one more bit of commentary there. Stefan and I both have the same relationship with the OWASP group, I think, which is, it's like, I think we should use OWASP as a counterexample for the model. Since I don't, having been in the security industry for 15 years or more, and also I mentioned to a few folks, I used to be a board member at OWASP. I don't see them having had an impact on web security at all. And I think that the way they tried to solve problems resulted in a lot of wasted effort, broken tools, and goodwill and energy spent on solving the wrong things. Sorry, got a phone call. So like trying to restrict the core of what ETHSecurity does to like an advisory role, setting really ambitious goals and then challenging people to meet them. And convincing people through a variety of different like sticks and carrots to get there, I think would be a more effective spin on the approach. But anyway, I think we beat this to death.
Yeah, no. So just to maybe reiterate or elaborate on that, it sounds more like if ETHSecurity is acting as an advisory board, let's say, then its really main function is to kind of house this repo of knowledge, which I think has been signaled as a needed thing. Absolutely, and that should probably live under either ETHSecurity or Ethereum.org type name, and then beyond that, signal for needed projects and encourage others with information and possibly funding to make those projects a reality.
Think of it like the X Prize.
The X Prize.
People to reach the moon.
Right. Well, it's like ETH Prize, and that's kind of where this whole project came out of with ETH Prize.
Oh, duh. Okay. Yeah. So just exclusive to security. Right.
Yeah. I mean, security is a broad enough topic and definitely detailed enough knowledge. Niche knowledge that it deserves its own community and sort of signaling group. So I think that was part of the idea at the beginning of the project. Cool. Does anybody else have any other ideas or topics they want to get into? I mean, I think this is all great. I had listed the manifesto or kind of founding documents as a topic, and I think we're kind of leaning towards that, right? Like, what do we want this group to actually be and do? We had talked about kind of the organization of the security ring for the FEM and the organization of these, maybe biannual or annual conferences like the Unconf as a role of ETHSecurity. Is that something kind of the organizers should do?
One question that I have is what will be the main source of knowledge where people will go so they can learn or contribute. Because now I see that the information is kind of in multiple places. There's a Secure ETH site, 2 forums, so the ETH Magicians, the Secure ETH forum, Google Docs, GitHub, Telegram, and there are multiple workshops incoming. So where do we actually centralize this information?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the big topics. The goal is to create a GitHub repo, which will then have a outward-facing wiki or website for a centralized place for knowledge, that being articles, that sort of thing. That same repo can also house like outcomes from the working groups. We do have a Secure discourse, and I think the general consensus has been that the security ring in the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians discourse might serve our needs, and will act to consolidate that channel of communication. And then for short form communication, the Telegram group can continue to act in that manner.
So the GitHub organization is ETHSecurity, right? This is where all the information will be posted from now on.
Correct. That's the goal. Chris, who's leading that working group and leading the wiki repo effort, isn't on the call today, but I do expect there to be some movement on that in the next couple of weeks.
If you want to put me as like a co-champion on that, you're more than welcome to, because I already have right privileges to it.
Sure. Yeah. I'll do that, Corey. Thank you. Yeah. Is that something you're willing to take on in the next 2 weeks? Is just having a working group meeting?
Yeah. I'll collaborate with Chris on that.
Cool. Thank you. But the question was like organizing these kind of community meetings or unconferences, gatherings for the FEM, that sort of thing. Is that something ETHSecurity should do, or is that something that should continue to, be whoever? I mean, it's already kind of self-selecting. People who are involved in the community can organize stuff. But we might be able to put some more borders around that structure. And we have an opinion on ETHSecurity playing that role.
There could be umbrella events, but I think every working group, if they want to go and do a separate thing, that's cool. But can you guys not hear me very well?
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
You're good.
Ish.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be able to allow for the groups evolve. It evolves as there's interest, but at the same time, I think there should always still be that sort of umbrella, sort of come together type of things. And it doesn't, there can be. I think it could be both in a way, if that makes sense.
Kevin, keep running a conference.
Keep putting them on?
Yeah, why not? I mean, that was a good experience. I like to go to Berlin. Maybe don't do it again in Berlin, but like that was.
Do it in Berlin again.
All right, yeah, sure. Do it in Berlin again. Fine.
I mean, but DEF CON might be a decent halfway point, because a lot of us will already be there coming together, and there is a security track, and a lot of us have already submitted talks for them with regards to security. Maybe us come together around that time for working groups or something would be useful.
Yeah, sure. I love single track conferences, and I like if you want to stand up a single track security conference, run it once per year, and have enough attendees that more than just us can show up, and everybody talks about all the cool shit they've been doing, like that's a win.
I would agree with that.
Cool. Yeah, it's definitely planned to do either having working group meetings, in-person meetings, or to do, some of what we did at the Unconf during the FEM the day before DevCon, if working groups choose to. It'll be less organized than the Unconf was. I don't know that we need to do lightning talks, and since DevCon is happening.
We have the status is renting quite a large venue for a 3-day hackathon before DevCon. We might have some space or availability to host some of this in that venue if it's worthwhile for everybody, at least for something like maybe getting together, talk about this type of stuff in one place.
Yeah, and I think Status is actually organizing the FEM meetup there between the two.
Yeah, I think you're right. We can get together and talk about like logistics of that if everybody wants to do it.
One comment I quickly had, you said feature on conferences might be more unstructured, which is fine. I think as these working groups start to keep going, I think if there's these unconferences or these ETHSecurity focused single track conferences happen, I think there should still be some priority for if there's a working group that's working within ETHSecurity that they're still able to come in, because there's going to be a time when there's going to be a working group that maybe can't present, or maybe the working group sort of fades out, and then new ones come, and so then they can just come in, plug in, but then there's still other talks as well. Anyway, that's getting way too in the weeds.
Sure, no, that's okay. I think if there was this biannual or annual, conference, it probably would be more organized. But since we just had the first Unconf, and DevCon is coming up with lots of other things happening around it, I don't think we need another full day like we had in Berlin. But having a place where people can be in person and push forward what we began in Berlin, I think is the goal.
I'd recommend only one per year. I don't think you want to suck the life out. So I would like to have security events here in New York. And if there's 2 conferences that I have to go to and prepare for every year that are a big deal, where I have to fly out a bunch of people from the team, it's going to be kind of exhausting. Just I'd plan for one big one next year, and we'll see how it goes. If there's a necessary push that's forcing you to do more than that, then do more than that, but don't over optimize.
Sure. Okay, cool. That gives us a little bit more scope on what the role ETHSecurity can play. Cool. Anything else that people would like to see ETHSecurity do or act on behalf of the community for? Or any other topics that people want to bring up and talk about right now?
We're at some point looking for node operators in our first little bit of whitelisted nodes, so I think I'm interested in bringing that up. But that's the only thing. Other than that, I think you run fantastic meetings.
What is it? What's the resource lift of a node operator?
Basically, like a current MacBook is essentially fine. It's not like work or anything like that.
All right, I have some servers I could probably help with that if you want to ping me.
Cool. Yeah, I'll ping you.
Sweet. Well, we've got 14 minutes left in the scheduled time. We can end early, or if you want to have a quick chill go around, that can be fun sometimes to hear about what other people are doing.
Yeah, I had a question. Just a
Sure.
kind of a broad question towards the community here. So with the organizational structure of a lot of the projects that currently exist in blockchain, it's very flat, remote. Most of the infrastructure that actually exists is cloud-based. Has anyone come up with a good solution for monitoring cloud-based services? I'm currently evaluating a project called ThreatStack that has local agents that then report system calls to a centralized data dashboard.
Yeah, ThreatStack's pretty cool. I know the founders. It's a nice product, but so there's a couple different parts to this, right? There's monitoring the actual code that runs in the cloud, and then there's monitoring the cloud configuration itself. The gold standard for monitoring the cloud itself is a product called Cloud Mapper. It's open source, promoted by or funded by Duo, and a guy named Scott, I can't remember, Scott something. I really should know this. Works on it. It's excellent. It'll ensure that like the state of your AWS or Google or whatever is like exactly how you want it and doesn't have, you know, unintentional misconfigurations. But in terms of like monitoring all your containers and whatnot, there's like 1,000,001 solutions.
Yeah.
A lot of people choose like free. Yeah, Scott Piper. There we go. A lot of people choose like a free OS query kind of monitoring solution. They'll throw up like a fleet instance from Collide and use OS query to grab data from inside the container, or they'll run it at the host level. Depends on what you want to get done, though.
Yeah, I just basically want a good way to look at what's currently happening in terms of who's accessing what on the infrastructure that we have, like at least critical infrastructure that we have. And so ThreatStack only offers somewhat of a system call level information, whereas I want something like a network IDS. So we'll probably roll our own like elk stack plus bro agents everywhere. But I wasn't sure if anyone had come up with this and what they do already that I can inform my judgment and going with ThreatStack.
So tell me again. So ThreatStack's going to give you system calls, but you want what instead?
Like network IDS. So like what type of network calls are hitting the agents that we can also have too, or not hitting the clients that we also have too.
So like flow data.
Yeah. Who's trying to access what and what ports they're trying to access it on. You don't quite get that stuff with ThreatStack.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder what Carbon Black does there too.
I'll look into that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll think about it.
It doesn't seem to be a lot of information around like how like the other type of security involved with like operational security of these decentralized organizations.
Well, to be honest, most people don't go network first like that. Most people do want the system calls. The trend in the industry is to move towards like, you know, container state monitoring and whatnot.
Which they give.
Yeah, the network data doesn't matter as much as like how it gets processed on the application. So a lot of people want what ThreatStack or OS Query or sysdig or other tools provide. That's been the general trend that we've seen.
Right on. I'll look into that. Thank you.
Oh.
Also, sorry about the dogs. They're lawnmower guy.
That's okay.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think org security is a bigger topic that you know we could noodle around in for a while. And I think Corey and I talked about it a little bit at East Berlin. So another whole another realm to dive into.
The one thing that I wanted to share was the Slither stuff. So I mentioned we've been investing a lot into our static analyzer, which is now open source. We added in a bunch of checks for some common kind of Solidity vulnerabilities, but we also added in these, we're calling them printers. So you can throw it a Solidity contract and it reports structured information about it. And there's 4 printers that are built in. We added the 4th one based on some of the trust discussion we had in Berlin, where you give it a file and it tells you every available function, what state variables that function can write to, and what conditions are required in order to reach that write. That way you can get some kind of perspective on like who can touch what. So basically like a principal mapper. We're going to continue to develop that, and we're trying to work on some better like integrations with people's tools and whatnot, but did a prototype, it works, prints out data that people actually care about seeing. So that's just on the wiki for Slither.
Awesome, that's cool. That's sounds like a direct outcome from the unconf, so that's rad. Awesome, thanks for sharing that, Dan.
The unconf was and those were involved with organizing it, like Rex and I think Brian helped out as well. fantastic. It was really, really great. It was really great seeing everyone, but it was really just good to meeting other clients. Really appreciated that. Thank you.
Cool.
Second
Thanks,
thought.
Jared.
Yep. 100%.
That was a really cool day. It felt great. Sweet. Is there last call for other comments or topics people want to discuss? We've got 7 minutes left on the call. All right, that'll probably do it then. Again, I was recording this call. I'll post it to YouTube shortly, and then post a link to that in the Telegram group. Thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being involved in the ETHSecurity community. Again, let me know if you would like to have some eyes on the community report before it goes out to before it gets published widely on Medium. And yeah, hope you all have a great day.
Awesome.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.
Later, guys. Good seeing you.
See ya.